By now, we all know that the rich avoid taxes, and they do it legitimately.
That it's not the taxpayer's responsibility to pay the most taxes that he can. It's the taxpayer's responsibility to pay the least taxes that he can.
But why does the government allow the rich to avoid taxes? In the year 60 BC, at age 40, Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey formed the first triumvirate, a political alliance that dominated Roman politics for several years. But there was a problem. Popularis, the political party Caesar belonged, wouldn't be allowed to rule because the opposition party, the Optimates, were mostly dominated by the elites. For him to create a name for himself, Caesar had to do it by fighting wars.
Now, there are some who are alive at this moment who will not be alive shortly. Those of them who do not wish to go on that journey, we will not send them. As for the others, I expect you to rock their world.
After a string of military victories in the Gallic Wars completed by 51 BC, which greatly extended Roman territory, Caesar had become very popular among the Roman citizens, and now his chance to rule had come. With the Gallic Wars concluded, the Senate ordered Caesar to step down from his military command and return to Rome. But he wouldn't listen. On 10th January 49 BC, Caesar openly defied the Senate's authority by crossing the Rubicon and marching towards Rome at the head of an army.
Comrades! Rome is in peril. Follow me. Forward!
This began Caesar's civil war, which he won, leaving him in a position of near unchallenged power and influence. Now, this is where I'm heading with this story. In September of 45 BC, on his return to Rome, Caesar found a lot of homeless people on the streets, many of whom had lost their properties due to immoral practices of usury, which charged Romans as high as 48% interest on their loans. To make the matter even worse, the rich who made all the money in Rome were doing nothing without money. They made all the money and kept it in the bank. Because the rich Romans didn't allocate their capital, Rome's economy didn't grow, and Caesar needed to do something drastic about that. So, being a dictator, Caesar went after the rich and forced them to allocate their capital and invest the money they had.
Can you imagine a more terrible sacrilege? Our beloved republic is in the hands of madmen. This is a dark day, and I stand at a fork in the road.
Understanding this historical event is very important if we must understand why modern governments deliberately allow the rich to avoid taxes. Now, pay attention to the following facts because it is very important. For any country to have a stable and growing economy, first, money must circulate fast, effectively, and continuously within the economy. And second, there must be a lot of capital available in that economy. To achieve the first objective, the government uses inflation, and to achieve the second objective, the government bribes the rich by allowing loopholes in tax laws. Let me explain the first part, inflation. For 90 years, between the years 1820 and 1910, the purchasing power of a dollar remained the same. That means if you had kept $1,000 in the bank in 1820 and withdrew it in 1910, your $1,000 will still buy the exact same thing it ought to buy 90 years ago. But that was a bad thing for the economy because then a lot of people could be saving money, which would then result in what the 20th century English economist John Maynard Keynes called paradox of thrift.
If everyone tries to save more and more of their income, that means they're spending less, which means other entities will have less income, and across the entire economy, demand will drop and it will be much more difficult for businesses.
I have made a video on this, which you can see at the end of this video, so I don't want to waste your time going back to it. But the idea is simple. If a lot of people in a given economy are saving money, money will not circulate, and the economy will not grow. That was what happened in Rome before Caesar came to power in 49 BC. But unlike Caesar, modern political leaders can't force people to spend their money. So they do something else. They deliberately make our money less valuable every year. You see, even though the value of the dollar remained the same for 90 years between 1820 to 1910, on 23rd December 1913, the Federal Reserve of America was established. And by 1920, 7 years after its establishment, the bank had destroyed the value of the dollars by 56.1%. If you want to know more about how this happened, I recommend the 2014 book by Stephen Mitford titled A History of Central Banking. Today, it's no longer a secret that central banks intentionally destroy the value of our money. For example, this publication is on the website of the U.S. Federal Reserve, and they claim that the U.S. Federal Reserve intentionally aims at increasing inflation at 2% every year. This is what I found on the website of the Bank of England. To encourage people to spend money so that money would circulate fast and continuously, the government uses inflation to discourage us from hoarding money.
In making our policy decisions over the next few years, we will continue to aim for inflation of 2% while sustaining the economic expansion and a strong labor market.
Encouraging or forcing people to spend money is the first part of our equation. The second part is attracting a lot of capital to the economy. So, to do this, the government bribes the rich. Again, modern political leaders can't do what Caesar did in 45 BC, so to attract a lot of capital in the economy, they use bribes in form of deliberate loopholes in tax laws. For example, in December of 1978, at the third plenary session of the 11th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese government initiated a policy called Special Economic Zones. On January 31st, 1979, the Chinese President Li Ziannian signed the Special Economic Zones policy, and the idea is simple. China wanted to attract foreign capital into their country, so they separated certain cities. It then meant if you wanted to start a production-oriented venture in cities like Shentao, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, or Xiamen, you would be allowed to avoid huge taxes. With several tax incentives like this, China attracted a lot of capital from all over the world, and you know what that did to the country. Here's another example. On 24th November 2008, the Saudi Arabia Council of Ministers issued its decision number 359 to grant conditional 10-year tax incentives on investments in designated underdevelopment provinces of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, namely Hale, Northern Borders, Jazan, Najran, Al-Bahar, and Al-Jauf. In Saudi Arabia, industrial or agricultural undertakings with foreign participation are granted a tax holiday of 10 years on income tax, provided you partner with a citizen of Saudi Arabia and allow them to own at least 25% of the company. Also in Saudi Arabia, machinery, equipment, spare parts, and raw materials used in manufacture are exempted from custom duties. Here is another example. In 2010, the Singapore government created what it called Productivity and Innovation Credit Scheme, PIC scheme. So, in Singapore, you'll get tax incentives if you invest in companies that undertake manufacturing or construction operations, providing engineering or technical services, perform research and development work, or carry on any of the qualifying activities of a pioneer service company. Talk of Russia, India, United Kingdom, South Africa, Nigeria, United States, or even North Korea. Every nation on earth intentionally bribe the rich to use their capital. And it's a good thing, because if you don't bribe those with resources to use it, they'll either hoard it or take it to another country. So, either way, you lose. After a given government had successfully attracted capital, the next thing they do is to keep that capital in the economy. And so, to do this, they have to use more bribes. For example, if you invested $1 million in a given economy and 1 year later you've made a profit of $300,000, the government would allow you to avoid taxes provided you can reinvest all of that money you just made into the same company. This way, you can make $1 billion or even $10 billion and still not pay any tax, provided you can do what the government wants, which is keep your money in our economy. So, why is the government doing this? Well, you see, all of the wonderful products and services we are enjoying are only possible because certain individuals allocated their money for the good of us all. Millions of people can only have jobs because someone allocated their resources to build businesses. Let me give you examples. Certain individuals spent billions of dollars on research and development before they could perfect the phone you're using to watch this video.
And we have invented a new technology called multi-touch, which is phenomenal. It works like magic.
Certain individuals allocated their resources to discover how to manufacture our computer cheaply, our automobiles, air transport, different technologies, even food and books are cheaply available because certain people allocated billions of dollars to research and mass produce them. Bribing those people to do it by allowing them to avoid taxes is for the good of us all, just as discouraging people from hoarding money is for the good of us all. On page 275 of his 1886 book, The Vanderbilts and the Story of Their Fortune, Augustus Crawford wrote, and I quote, "It is not known that aggregations of money in the hands of individuals are an inestimable blessing to society, for without them there could be no public improvements or private enterprises, no railroads or steamships or telegraphs, no cities, the leisure class, no schools, colleges, literature, art, in short, no civilization. The one man to whom the community owes most is the capitalist, the man who saves and invests so that his property reproduces and multiplies itself instead of being consumed." Now, some people are saying, remove the tax loophole so that the rich can pay their fair shares. Unfortunately, that's not possible, and I will tell you why. If any government doesn't encourage capital allocation in its territory, the rich will simply move their resources elsewhere.
It does not make sense to take the job of capital allocation away from people who have demonstrated great skill in capital allocation and give it to an entity that has demonstrated very poor skill in capital allocation, which is the government.
That guy who has $1 billion in the bank has a lot of good he can do in any city or country in the world. He can allocate part of that money into research, he can develop a new product, he can compete with existing products and make the prices cheaper. He can employ a lot of people. I mean, there are a lot of things he can do to boost the economy in any given territory. And there are 150 countries in the world competing for his $1 billion. So you better bribe him to use his money in your territory or he'll go elsewhere tomorrow morning. So, in conclusion, the subject of tax and tax avoidance is so complex that I doubt if a 13 or 14-minute video will explain it all. More so, I am not a tax professional, nor do I know everything about tax laws. This video is only about the basics, and the basics are an economy needs money to go around fast, and we need a lot of capital. To achieve these two objectives, we can't do what Caesar did in this modern time, so we have to do something else. We deliberately create inflation so people would be discouraged from hoarding money, and we bribe the rich so they will not only bring their capital into our economy, but keep it there forever. So both inflation and bribing the rich might not seem like a good thing to do, but for now, nobody has discovered any better way to grow an economy. If you want to know more about the concept of paradox of thrift, as proposed by the English economist John Maynard Keynes, then watch the video on your screen now. The video on your screen now shows you why, even though you need to save money to become rich, the government doesn't want you to do that. Hence, it's safe to say the government wants you to remain poor. Watch the video on your screen now and see you inside.